Hey everyone, it's Mojaxx, back in the DJcity Lockdown Lab. Numark have just released two new controllers in their Mixtrack line, the Mixtrack Pro FX and the Mixtrack Platinum FX. These are aimed really at beginners, but they do have a bunch of features which might well appeal to pros as well. Let's take a look. Numark have had a range of very popular entry-level controllers for many years now, and they've got consistently better over time as both the hardware and the software they run have improved. What we're looking at here is the two latest additions to their line new for 2020. The first is the Mixtrack Pro FX, which has a street price of around $200 in the US, and the second is the Mixtrack Platinum FX, which costs around $50 more. Both units look very similar when placed side by side, as they share the same body and many features too. We'll start with the shared stuff first of all before moving on to what sets them apart from each other. Construction is all plastic, as you would expect at this price, but they feel solid enough, and there are no obvious weak points in either the controls or the body. Connections are minimal but appropriate for the needs of buyers. One output on RCAs, USB to your computer, a 1/4-inch jack for a mic, and both sizes of headphone socket. The faders are solid enough, with the crossfader having a sharp cut and respectable cut-in distance. You can certainly throw down some decent cuts on these two if that's your thing, and I'll discuss scratching more later. The layout is very intuitive, and I was delighted to see that these controllers follow the layout logic of separate players and a mixer, with the play and cue buttons to the left and the pitch faders to the right of their deck sections. This is just far more practical than a mirrored layout from a muscle memory point of view when users move on to higher end hardware. Considering their compact size, the Pro and the Platinum managed to fit a lot of stuff on the top panel without feeling cramped. 3-band EQ and trim controls, dedicated filter knobs, a central effects section which we'll get to shortly, track browsing and loading controls, and 8 pads for each deck, as well as a separate loop section which lets you halve and double loops with ease. There is even a full-size and very accurate pitch fader, as well as pitch bend buttons, which makes manual beat matching a breeze whatever technique you prefer. Overall, I'm delighted with how well the layouts on here compare with pro-level kit, be that separates or controllers. Some earlier beginner controllers from Numark have sometimes had layout decisions which felt compromised by size or just a bit quirky, but any experienced DJ would feel at home very quickly on these, and that's great for beginners. Both units come with support for the free Serato DJ Lite, and will also work with Serato DJ Pro if you buy a license for that or have one already. Lite is, by its nature, more limited than Pro, but it has enough there to get beginners comfortably into the Serato ecosystem with 4 hot cues, auto loops and effects. Because the bottom row of pads are not utilised by the Lite software, whatever mode you're in, those remain dedicated to stutter, basically a temporary extra hot cue, and transport controls, back to start and scrub back and forth. I do think Lite is a great option for beginners, with my only real criticism being that there is no set recording feature. I'll always keep banging the drum for that one, as I do think it's really important for new DJs to be able to hear themselves back as part of the learning process. Recording is available if you're using Serato DJ Pro, of course, and the integration with that software is just as good. Using that, you'll have access to all 8 pads on the hardware for the different modes. The pads themselves are a decent size and have a nice soft touch, complemented by clicky play, pause and cue buttons, just how I like it. There are 4 pad modes. Hot cue, auto loop and sample are fairly self-explanatory, but it's worth mentioning the fader cuts mode. This cuts the signal in different patterns as you hold each pad down, effectively simulating the fader action required to do different scratch techniques. I'm in two minds about that feature. I don't have any real issue with it being there, and I can see it maybe being useful for training your record hand when learning to cut, but I'm not completely convinced. If you just treat it as a fun effect type of thing though, it's cool. We move on to the effects, which are different from the traditional Serato DJ 3 knobs and 3 buttons layout, but instead have more in common with higher end mixers like the Range 70, 72 and the Numark Scratch. The big activation paddles go 2 ways, locking when you push them away and springing back when you pull them towards you. The effects are automatically assigned to each side when you connect either of the mix tracks, with echo, flanger, high and low pass filters, reverb and phaser in Serato DJ's multi-effects mode. You can override the assignments and do things manually, but as soon as you touch any of the controls on the unit, it reverts back. This is maybe a little restrictive in some ways, but overall the accessibility of this setup is a real positive. It's super easy just to get some cool effects going with very little thought. I will note here that the effects are all post fader and post crossfader too, so you can get echo and reverb tails when you cut the deck out. So those features both units all have in common, but what are the differences between the Pro and the Platinum? Well, there are two. Firstly, the Platinum has 4 decks, even in Serato DJ Lite. Now, looking at the units, you might not have guessed that, but it does. And honestly, I'm not really that fussed. It works like some of the other entry-level controllers on the market, with a deck swap changing the entire side of the controller, and then it has soft takeover for the different controls, so the levels won't jump until you move the up fader to where it was before, for example. On a functional level, it does work fine, but I just can't imagine myself ever using it at a gig or even messing around at home. It would be too easy to get confused about which deck is active. That may be just me, and if it's a selling point for you, that's all good. But for me, it's just not a reason to spend the extra money on the Platinum. Unlike the second difference, which is worth $50 all day long in my opinion, the jog wheels on both units are very good for the price. 6 inches in diameter with capacitive touch and a really good feel to them, with possibly the best weight and resistance of any Numark controllers to date. I also like the outer edge design too, which is ideal for pitch bending. Whether you're learning to cut or just mixing, the jogs on both of the Mixtracks are spot on. The Platinum, however, levels things up even more, with a central display in the middle of the jogs. These are reminiscent of the ones on the much higher priced NS6 II, and they offer a ton of information, including BPM, pitch position, pitch range, time, keylock status, and which deck you're using if you're using all 4. This is all very useful stuff, but for me, the killer feature is the playhead display around the edge, which gives you a virtual cue marker and makes cutting or even queuing up a much more intuitive process than on the Pro, where you'll spend a lot more time looking at your laptop screen. I fully appreciate that for a lot of beginners, $200 will be the absolute maximum they will want or can afford to spend on their first controller, and the Pro remains an excellent choice within that price ceiling. But if you're an experienced DJ looking for a budget controller, or a beginner who has aspirations to get into cutting, then it's well worth trying to find the extra $50 for the Platinum. Those screens are quite simply dope. So there you go, a look at the Mixtrack Platinum effects and the Mixtrack Pro effects from Numark. I'm always blown away at just how good this entry-level stuff really is nowadays. Not only looking back to the days when I started out and the terrible belt drive turntables and awful mixers that I had when I started my career, but even if you just look back, 3, 4, 5 years at the controllers we had back then, the quality and performance difference is just on a different level. The stuff you can do with a Mixtrack Pro or Platinum effects is just amazing to me when you consider what we had before. So yeah, thoroughly recommended basically for a beginner. Absolutely. If you're looking to get into DJing, you want something that's going to put you in good stead as you move up onto more premium hardware as your career progresses, these are an excellent choice. If you're a pro DJ looking for something to just have at home to practice with, or to take out to gigs where you've got to take, your own equipment, it might be a small bar gig or something, you don't want to invest a lot of money in hardware to take out for that, well, these are going to be an excellent choice for you as well. The way they integrate into Serato DJ software is spot on. Overall, yeah, a very solid recommend, and I'm always my mind is blown at how good this affordable gear can be in 2020. Thank you for watching today. Make sure you subscribe for all our future tips, tricks, and product reviews. Stay safe. I'll see you soon.